right, and we are live. Here we go. And Mitchy3 already getting a comment out there and a like out there. So perfect. Let's see if we can get this thing going. Get started here in a second. Let's get some people to get in here and join the chat. We'll dive into some good discussion today. It's a weird echo. Okay, all right. So we've got a couple people joining. I know we said 3:30. We're a couple minutes early. Hopefully we'll get some more traction around that time. And as this live stream progresses, once again, I want to apologize for not having a live stream on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night. As I mentioned on Sunday, was very under the weather. It continued to get worse over the next couple days. And I just couldn't bring myself to do anything on Tuesday. I missed my classes. I just did a lot of sleeping. That's what I did. So apologize for not being here on Tuesday, but I did promise that we'd be back on Thursday, and here we are, feeling much better and ready to dive into it. And of course, it is Casual Thursday. That's kind of been our motto here for these live streams every Thursday, Casual Thursday, representing a little bit of Arkansas State, just because, of course, that's where I attend college, attend school right now. So I had to go a little casual today, represent the school a little bit, even though they're not my team per se. Still have to represent my school and where I'm going. So Casual Thursday, maybe we can get that hashtag trending at some point. So, but good to be back. Mitchy3's on. Brody L, what's going on? Always good to see you. Big time Notre Dame fan. And then Gabe Esom, always good to see you as well. Glad you were able to join the chat today. And I'm sure before other people jump on, I'll reiterate, when you jump on here, go ahead and smash the like button real quick. Hit the like button, helps our analytics, helps us out. We really do appreciate that. So when you jump on, hit that like button, help us get to double digits like we have these past couple live streams. It's been greatly appreciated. Emperor of Rome's on. Always good to see you. Glad you're able to join us today. Thank you for jumping on. Glad to have you. One of my big time supporters and moderators. Him and 20 Savage, moderators for the live chats, and do a phenomenal job in there since the beginning. So glad to see you. All right, so we've got a couple people on right now, and as I've said before, we like to let the chat and let the live stream be dictated by you guys, by the fans, and the way you guys take it in the direction you want to go, and I'll follow your lead, and I'll discuss and answer your questions. But I do have one thing I want to talk about today, and of course we'll dive into the questions and comments and debates that we have going on here. We don't have a horrible time limit per se today. Can't go all night, but we're not in any rush necessarily. Comic Dude's on. Comic Dude 45. Always good to see you. Glad you're able to join us. Craig Penis. Glad to see you on here. You're able to catch a lot of videos, but haven't been able to catch a live stream. Glad you're able to catch one today. I know sometimes when it comes on in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, I know sometimes it's a tough time with people with work and school and other conflicts. Same here with me. You know, I would much rather be doing stuff at night, 6:30, 7 o'clock prime time, but I'm usually busy at that time too. So I just find a little sliver of time in there to get out a live stream and hope you guys are able to jump on with us. But I'm glad you were able to join. And I appreciate that. Keeping up the good work. I appreciate your support. I've seen you comment many times on previous videos. So one thing that I want to talk about, and I've had this on my list of things to talk about for a while here, and y'all have done such a good job of dictating the chat that we've never really gotten to it. You know, it's March, right? It's what is it, March 7th right now? So we're still a little under 6 months away from the start of college football. Now, Florida, Miami, if that get pushed up, they might begin on August 24th. Maybe it's going to start on August 31st. But I was looking through the schedule. You know, it's never too early to start looking ahead. It's never too early to start looking ahead towards some of the big-time games that are coming up in week 1 of college football. It gets me excited. I know we've got a long ways to go. We haven't even finished we haven't even hit March Madness yet. We haven't even hit the NFL draft. And then we've got the dog days of summer before we can get there. But it's never too early to start looking ahead and listen to some of these week 1 games we've got. Actually, first 2 weeks, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to give you my take on these games, and I'd like to hear y'all's responses. Which ones do you think are going to have the biggest implications, maybe for a certain conference or for playoff implications, new head coaches, or which ones you're just more excited about in general? So we've got Houston and Oklahoma for starters. That's in week 1. And that's a big game. I mean, Dana Holgorsen coming over, first game with Houston. Oklahoma, first game with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback. So that's a big-time game. And if you remember a couple years ago, I think it was the start of the 2016 season, Houston and Oklahoma met against each other in Houston, I believe, and Houston won that game. The Cougars beat the Sooners by like 10 points. And that was when they had Greg Ward and Tom Herman was still there, and things were really trending up for Houston before they ended up losing to, I think, Navy, and then they lost to SMU, and their shots of going to a New Year's Six Bowl, because the year before they won the Peach Bowl against Florida State, were shot. So this year they meet again in the season opener, Houston and Oklahoma. It's going to be a lot of fun. My early my early prediction would be saying Oklahoma would win that game, but I wouldn't put anything past Dana Holgorsen. He can really transform an offense, and Oklahoma's going to have to be breaking in Jalen Hurts. Now, I'm not really worried about Lincoln Riley have to breaking in new quarterbacks. I've never been worried. I'm not worried about that anymore. About him, maybe seeing some growing pains with new quarterbacks. He didn't have issues with Baker Mayfield. He didn't have issues with Kyler Murray. I don't expect him to have issues with Jalen Hurts either. Another big-time Week 1 game, a very intriguing matchup in the first meeting between these two schools, Florida State and Boise State meeting in Week 1. Now, this game, if both of these schools were still very dominant, this would be a heck of a game. But Florida State coming off a down year, Boise State not quite what they used to be, where they used to be, number 5 in the country, number 4 in the country. And I know with the new rankings, with the college football playoffs committee and all that, it's a little bit different. I do understand that. But Boise State really hasn't been what they used to be back in like 2007, 2008, early 2010s. This game, though, big for Willie Taggart, because you don't want to start off year 2 with a loss to a Group of 5 team, even if that Group of 5 team is still Boise State, who has consistently been one of the better Group of 5 schools. Boise State, though, loses a bunch of production on the offensive side of the ball, and Florida State, conversely, doesn't even have an offense, in my opinion. It doesn't even have a quarterback that they can rely on. They're still very iffy on that position. So, a very intriguing matchup there. Not as big as some of the other games, but, it is a big one. And it's an intriguing one to keep our eye on just for multiple reasons. A big-time resume booster for Boise State for their shot at trying to make a New Year's Six Bowl game. Big-time game for Florida State to get things started on the right track after what was a horrible year under Willie Taggart. And I think the last live stream we had a lot of discussion on the Willie Taggart era at Florida State. Auburn versus Oregon, a rematch of that 2010 national championship game or 2011 national championship game between the Tigers and the Ducks. This is the one that I think I'm looking forward to the most in Week 1. I'm a stickler for rematches. I don't care if it was 50 years in the past or if it was just a year ago. I love national championship rematches. I love Super Bowl rematches. That's why this year was intriguing for me to see the Patriots and the Rams. Even though they hadn't met in 17 years, it was still cool to see that. You're in history, in the history books, you're going to have Patriots and Rams twice in there, And so you've got Auburn and Oregon in Week 1 here, and this is the one that I think probably owns. And we'll jump on to the Florida-Miami in a second. But between this one and Florida-Miami, I think those are the two games that have the biggest potential college football playoff implications. Auburn and Oregon, everybody's jumping on the Auburn hype train right now. And I know in the past we have talked about Auburn, in Gus Malzahn, is their bus finally going to crash? Are they really all they're cracked up to be? And I don't think they are right now. Now, I'm not making a prediction. I'm not going to come out here and give you what I think their record's going to be because I haven't done that yet. And it's way too early for that anyways. But everybody's jumping on the hype train with Auburn again, like they do every year, and I don't understand why. Now, same thing with Oregon, though. Everybody's jumping on the hype train with Oregon. Justin Herbert comes back at quarterback. Very solid recruiting class, very strong defense, even though they just got rid of Jim Leavitt as defensive coordinator. So some questions there for the Ducks, but I think Oregon has more answers than Auburn right now, in my opinion. Auburn losing their star quarterback in Jarrett Stidham. This game is going to be really intriguing. I think this one opens up in Dallas, in Arlington, at Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium, and this is the one that I'm really, really excited about, and I would go as far to say that I think Oregon will win this game in Week 1. Now, do not hold me to that. In 3 months or 4 months, when we predict this game for Auburn and Oregon individually, that could change. Things do happen over in a couple months, in the span of a couple months. But I do think that Oregon right now just has more talent right now than Auburn. And I think that's going to be a very intriguing game, a really, really fun one to watch. Like I said, anytime you get a rematch, especially a national championship-like rematch, it's going to be fun to watch. But I think that Oregon will win that game. Now, Emperor of Rome says he wants Auburn to beat Oregon, which is crazy that he wants Auburn to win because he is a big-time Alabama fan. So, but I mean, I do get that. I understand. And then our final week 1 game that I want to talk about. Now we got a couple of questions here, and we'll jump onto those here in a second. Florida, Miami. Of course, everybody knows about that one. That's been the news a lot lately, just because there's that chance that Florida, Miami could push that game back and play that on August 24th, a week earlier than they were originally scheduled to do. And I'm all for that. We discussed that in a previous live stream, and I don't have anything against that. That's more football, or early football for me. You know, I don't have to wait an extra week. And I'm not just getting normal football. I'm getting a big-time matchup, an in-state rivalry game. So that would be huge. That dude BP, sorry, hey, no worries, man. Glad you're able to join us. We're just talking week 1 games. So it's never too early to talk. Never too early to talk about that kind of stuff. Just kind of highlighting the big matchups coming up in week 1. Border Bob, glad you were able to join us here. Recently just followed me on Twitter. Appreciate that, and has been a pretty big-time contributor to these live streams as of late. So glad to see Dat Dude and Border Bob both joining us today. But back to Florida, Miami. That is one game that I think is by far bigger for Florida than it is for Miami, because Miami is a struggling team right now. And how can you say struggling? I know that a couple of years ago they were in the hunt for the college football playoff. They were supposed to have those type of sights set on that this year. Didn't live up to the hype. Mark Richt retires. But the thing is, Manny Diaz comes back as head coach now, which once again I think was a phenomenal hire by the Hurricanes. And even though he was going to take the Temple job, don't blame him for coming back and taking the Miami job. I think anybody in their right mind would do that. The strength of the Miami, and we've said this over and over and over again, but the strength of those Miami teams of the past couple of years has been their defense, led by Manny Diaz. The offense has been the problem, and that dude PP making a very good point. Miami has no quarterback. Right. When you don't have a quarterback, you have a very struggling offense. If he can do that, if him and Dan Enos can transform that Miami offense, maybe they can give Florida a fight here. But Florida, I think, beats Miami in week 1. A big game for them. Their sights are not just set on winning the SEC East, but also potentially crashing the college football playoff. Now, I'm not saying they're going to get there, but you're looking at that, and the way Florida finished their season, annihilating Michigan in the Peach Bowl, I can't see them getting worse. I see Dan Mullen continuing to build with this Gators program. And right now, I think they are the biggest threat to Georgia in the SEC East. And so I think they could get a big-time win. It's all about now those non-conference games. You've got to play your conference opponents. It's going to happen. And you can't change how your conference opponents do. So if you got a team like, for Florida, for example, if they play a team like Vanderbilt or an Arkansas or one of the struggling teams in the SEC, they can't change the fact that they're a 2-win team or a 3-win team, or how bad they are. But they can schedule decent opponents in non-conference. They did that with Miami. That's why, teams like UCF, for example, never really got the benefit of the doubt when it came to college football playoff time, because they didn't have a strong non-conference schedule. This is a big-time resume booster for Florida to do that, big-time resume booster for Miami to do that, and kind of send the Gator season to start off the wrong way. But I would think that Florida would get the job done. Miami, too much turmoil right now. New head coach, even though they promoted from within, still got to find their identity on offense. It's going to be closer than some expect. I know we're still almost 6 months away from that, but I like that game a lot, actually. Florida, Miami, Auburn, Oregon, top 2 week 1 games by far. Week 2 having 2 good ones as well. LSU at Texas, Texas A&M at Clemson, and then a big-time game in week 4 as well, Notre Dame at Georgia. So plenty of big-time non-conference games coming up over those about the first month of the college football season. Of course, we'll dive into those way deeper into detail and give you more analysis on those as we get closer to time. But it's always fun to look a lot farther ahead and get excited for these games that we know and should expect to be pretty exciting and give us a good start to the season. I know I rambled on for a little bit. That's just me. I like to look ahead. I love analyzing this stuff really early in advance. So we're going to jump into some of the comments here. I've been seeing them pop up. I want to take a look at them. Britt Hall joining the chat again. He's been fairly frequent. Glad to see him. Is Florida State's skills better or worse than Jameis Winston's ability to shoplift groceries? He's always a joker. Let me tell you what, this Britt guy. If anybody knows him. Florida State's skills better or worse than Jameis Winston's ability to shoplift groceries? Well, his abilities to shoplift groceries are pretty darn bad, so I'd say Florida State may be a little bit better. talent-wise, but maybe not by much, especially after what we saw this past season. Good one there. That dude BP asking, how do I feel about North Carolina with the return of Mack Brown? Lots of buzz around the area with big-time recruits that are giving us the time of day to at least visit. And, you know, I'm a big fan of the Mack Brown hire. I am. You know, he had a first stint at North Carolina many years ago, and then of course went to Texas, did great things there. But, you know, it's one of those things, can lightning strike twice? You know, can he replicate some success that he did at North Carolina here? He's been out of the game for a while. I think it's a good hire. I don't think North Carolina is going to jump from, I don't know how many games they won here, 2 games, 3 games. I don't know if they're going to jump from that to, before I get done with that, Border Bob, appreciate that. Just donate to the Super Chat. Every little bit counts. Every little bit counts, and that stuff goes a long way for me in promoting this channel and helping this channel out. So appreciate that, Border Bob, a whole lot there. Thank you for that. Thank you for your support. Anybody else, Super Chat is available. We do appreciate any contributions, so thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. But I'm a big fan of the hire for Mack Brown going to North Carolina. I don't think they're going to jump from, maybe, I don't even know if they're going to go to a bowl game this year. I'm going to be quite honest with you. But I think Mack Brown will get them there. He's just been out of the game for a while. He is getting older. How long does he truly want to stay in this coaching game? Does he want to stay in it for another 10 years? Is he going to do it for 3 years, 4 years? Is he just doing it for a little while and just to see how it goes? I mean, you know, how well can he build up this North Carolina program before he leaves again? So that's my biggest fear right now. But I do like the hire. I think North Carolina will be back in a bowl game, probably not this year, but the next year, and then maybe he can start getting them into contention in the ACC. But no one right now is even close to contending with Clemson in the ACC. Not even close. So I don't. It's gonna be a while before anybody can ever do that. And Border Bob, once again, thank you for the Super Chat. I am feeling better. Thank you for asking, and thank you for saying that. Like I said at the beginning of the stream, it was a rough first part of the week. We're still not quite 100%, but certainly feeling way better than we were back in the past, back a couple days ago. Emperor of Rome making the comment earlier that he hopes Auburn beats Oregon. I said that's ironic because he's a big-time Alabama fan, saying he will always support an SEC team over a non-SEC team, even if it is Auburn. And that's an interesting topic there. We can touch on that for a second. You know, a lot of people tend to support, you know, the entire SEC. So even if it's your big-time rival, you want them to do well. You want them to beat another you want them to beat a Big Ten team, or especially in bowl season. You want all the SEC teams to win. If you're in the Big Ten, you want all the Big Ten teams to win. You know, do you guys have issues with that? There are some people that just really get, and I'm not one of them personally, but there are some people that get really annoyed with people that just support the entire conference. Just like, you know, oh, your team is horrible. If you have a horrible team in the SEC, Big Ten, wherever, but you're just sitting there banking on, you know, people always use Alabama or Georgia as a prime example in the SEC because they say, you know, the SEC really isn't that talented, as some people say, except for Alabama, Georgia, LSU at times. Florida's on the rise, and I disagree with that. I think it's totally fine to support the entire conference. I think that's important. I think it is great for someone to support the entire SEC. Now, you're not going to root for your rival necessarily in conference play. No, you're not going to root for your rival or another SEC. No, but you will root for them to beat other teams to show that your conference is the dominant conference. You would hope. And for the past decade, that has certainly been the SEC, without a doubt. And I think it continues to be. The Big Ten's closing that gap, I think, a little bit. But right now, I still think it's the SEC. I think it's important to support the conference as a whole. You know, and you can pride yourself on that. That's what I believe. So a very good point by Emperor of Rome there. Craig Pina says, game day should go to Athens, week 4, Notre Dame versus Georgia. You know, that's a big-time game, without a doubt. Obviously, a couple of years ago, Georgia going to Notre Dame. And I think that was like in 20-19. I mean, it was a thrilling game. It was a heck of a game. Georgia getting the strip sack there at the end to clinch victory. You know, game day, you know, they usually don't decide this stuff until about a week before. So I think that's a big-time game, especially if both teams are undefeated at that point, which I would expect they would be. I don't know their exact schedules off the top of my head, but it's only in week 4. I would expect both teams to be at least 3-0 at that point. Could have playoff implications. Obviously, a non-conference game because Notre Dame Independent, Georgia SEC, so that would be huge. Yeah, I could see game day going there. And it's also usually kind of rare to see a game like that being played that, I say, late in the season, but that's 4 weeks into the season. Usually those big time marquee matchups like that are usually week 1, week 2. This is week 4. We're talking about towards the end of September here, so that is kind of late. Both these teams will have a couple games under their belts, whether they're against cupcake teams or maybe they're against a conference opponent for Georgia. Like I said, I don't memorize their schedule right now, but yeah, I can see game day possibly going there, but it also depends on how other teams are faring and how, what the other games are looking like in that given week. Comic Dude 45, one part of me wants you to do predictions much earlier, but another part of me understands why that unfortunately can't happen. Trust me, I wish I could be doing predictions now too. Honestly, that's my favorite thing to do. I know it's y'all's favorite thing to see. It kills me too, but the thing is, if we started predictions now, and like you said, you understand, but if we did predictions now, we'd be done by like May, and then we have all summer, and we're just going to be sitting here all summer, and we're knocking out a bunch of content now. Summer, and I'm telling you what, predictions, that's what gets us through all the way up until August, and that's what gets us through to the start of the season. So I'm itching to get started on that myself. A lot of work that's going into it right now, actually. I was preparing for that. We'll have an official date out fairly soon. So keep your eye out for that on Twitter and on YouTube for a promo video for that, for the official date of predictions like we did last year. So I'm ready to get started on that too. Just got to be patient. Just a couple more months though. So Border Bob, once again, contributing with a super chat. Extremely appreciate that. His question when he did that is, Ohio State really a top 5 team with a new coach and a new quarterback? Now, here's the thing. Ohio State is one of those teams that because of who they are will always get the benefit of the doubt. And that's not me dogging on Ohio State. That's just the type of team they are. They've got that, that swagger and that type of reputation of being a very prominent school. It's very rare that you're going to see Ohio State, fall from grace, especially in the preseason poll. Now, Ryan Day coming in as a new head coach, I think that it was a great hire. I don't think the coaching change is the biggest issue for Ohio State. Urban Meyer, arguably one of the greatest head coaches of all time, without a doubt. I mean, he's in my top 5. But, they promoted from within. Ryan Day did coach the first 3 games of the season when we had that whole Urban Meyer scandal going on. And, yeah, those first 3 games weren't necessarily that tough. They beat Oregon State. I know they beat some other cupcake team, and then they beat TCU. And that was a decent win, even though TCU wasn't – it ended up not being that good down the stretch. But he's got, he's learned under Urban Meyer. He's been offensive coordinator for Ohio State. I don't expect the offense to see a lack of production. I think Ryan Day was a good hire. It's very important to promote from within, especially when you're losing a coach as good as Urban Meyer. You don't want to bring someone in that's necessarily going to change everything that he did. Ryan Day, learning from him, probably not going to change that much. Now, the biggest question is, you say new quarterback. That's my only fear with Ohio State, is bringing in Justin Fields, who did not play that much at Georgia, was a very, 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He's a talented quarterback. I'm not dogging him at all. But is he ready to become starter of the Ohio State University to get Ohio State to a Big Ten championship and competing for the college football playoff? And I'm not dogging him. He's somewhat unproven. We have not seen much of him except for maybe in garbage time at Georgia. And when he came to Ohio State, he's basically being given the starting job because, Tate Martell left. Joe Burrow at LSU, as he played the entire last season, Tate Martell leaving, going down to Miami. It's Justin Fields' job to lose. And I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback. I think he is. But I think he's going to go through some growing pains. He is very young. That's my biggest concern more with Ohio State right now. It's not the head coaching change, but the quarterback change. Because, I wasn't too worried about Dwayne Haskins coming in for J.T. Barrett. Ohio State, we've mentioned, has always had very solid quarterbacks. You had J.T. Barrett, you had Cardale Jones, you had Braxton Miller, you had, Dwayne Haskins, and now you're bringing in Justin Fields. They've consistently, for about the past, almost the past decade, consistently had Terrell Pryor going even farther back. They have consistently had solid quarterbacks. Justin Fields can do that. I just don't know if it's going to happen right off the bat. Got to be patient with them. But they will finish this. To start the season, they will be at least top 8. Top 8. You say top 5, or asking if they're top 5. If they are, I don't see them being in the top 4. I think them being 5th. I think top 8 is where the Buckeyes should start, somewhere in that range. Nowhere higher than 5th. So, okay, another good question here from Craig Pina. I know you typically don't cover the NFL, but as a Giants fan, New York Giants fan, I was wondering if you think there is a quarterback worth drafting in round 1, or should we grab a pass rusher instead in the first round? You know, we've talked about this a little bit in the past about the quarterback class of this NFL draft class, and I came out and said, you know, I don't feel like there is any quarterback that just has blown me away. You know, last year's class was very solid. You had Baker Mayfield, who was the number 1 overall pick. I didn't think he should have been, but he proved me wrong. Did great things with the Cleveland Browns. Might actually be a consistent quarterback for the Browns. You had Sam Darnold. You had Josh Rosen. A couple years ago, you had Patrick Mahomes, who they traded up for at 10th, which I thought was high. Ended up being a great steal for Andy Reid and the Chiefs. This year, though, everybody's kind of projecting, you know, Dwayne Haskins to go to the Giants. And as you being a Giants fan, this is relevant to you. I do not think that Dwayne Haskins is an NFL quarterback. And I could be wrong. That is kind of a hot take. You know, I'm not going to make a stupid comment like Stephen A. Smith and say, oh, yeah, he's more of a runner than a passer. No, absolutely not. I just don't think he's an NFL quarterback. I don't know if he, you know, some people said maybe he should have waited. He put up some great numbers at Ohio State. This past season for the Buckeyes, he was phenomenal. Absolutely. And he can do some work on the ground. I'm not saying he's not a runner, but come on, Stephen A. He is a passer more so than a runner. I don't think the Giants should take a chance on him. You know, if you're looking at other quarterbacks, you've got guys like Drew Lock, you've got Daniel Jones, you've got Ryan Finley. I mean, there are another handful of quarterbacks out there, but, you know, I think Dwayne Haskins is probably the highest rated right now. He's probably number 1 on most people's board. Kyler Murray, I know, is up there. He's getting a lot of discussion about potentially being the number 1 overall pick to the Cardinals. Don't know if I agree with that. But to answer your question, I think that the Giants should hold off. They've got Eli Manning. I know people are frustrated with him, but he has done good things with the Giants. Hold off. Next year's draft class, I think next year's quarterback draft class is going to be better. Now, you don't know where the Giants are going to fall. They've got a good opportunity being pretty high up in the draft order to get a solid quarterback, but they could always make a trade and get a quarterback next year, and I think that's what they need to do. Or you can draft a quarterback later in this round that I think would better suit your system. Not go for the big name like Dwayne Haskins. But if I were the Giants, I'd draft a pass rusher, quarterback next year in the 2020 draft. Just going through some of the more comments here. Got some good discussion. Mike Myrick joined a few minutes ago. What's going on? Spring football season. As always, he says, go Noles. So good to see you. Glad you're able to join us. And it is spring football season. We'll probably have some coverage here fairly soon over some of the spring games. Well, you know, we're fastly approaching some of those and some big time. You know, we got position battles, we got quarterback battles, we got some big time running back battles. How teams are progressing and looking with new head coaches. We'll have some coverage on that as we get closer to time. You know, spring games usually hitting the mark around April, most of the month of April. So we'll definitely be touching on that some. So be prepared for that. And any questions you'll have on that, we'll certainly discuss that. Comment Dude 45 making a good point. Auburn versus Oregon is a win-win for Emperor of Rome, because if Auburn wins, the SEC looks good, and if Auburn loses, he can make fun of them for losing an out-of-conference game. So bingo, win-win. I think it would be better for if you're an SEC homer or a Big Ten homer, whoever, you definitely would be pulling for a team in your conference to win. You don't want to lose to another conference. Beat each other up inside your own. That's what I've always said about the SEC West. The SEC West beats each other up, and sometimes that hurts the SEC as a whole. Because a couple of years ago, you had Alabama, you had LSU, you had Mississippi State up there at number 1 for a little while. You had Ole Miss in the top 4. A&M was decent. Arkansas was not in contention, but they weren't bad. I mean, they were average. They beat Ole Miss and prevented Ole Miss from going to the SEC championship game. They were winning 7-8 games a year there for a little while. So the SEC was just beating each other up, and sometimes that ended up hurting the conference in terms of a chance of getting a team into the playoff or getting 2 teams into the playoff. It just depended. So, there's something to be said for that. Emperor of Rome, who is the most underrated running back of all time? He says Frank Gore. And if you're talking just about like NFL wise, I mean you could offer up a lot of a lot of names for that, but Frank Gore is a name that you don't hear about that. I mean, everybody knows it, but you don't hear about that much. He's gotten older. I mean, obviously he's gotten older, but he is very, very consistent. I can't remember. I saw a stat recently about Frank Gore. I don't know if it was how many consistent seasons with 1,000 yards or something along that line, but Frank Gore is a Hall of Famer in my eyes. Unfortunately, Frank Gore never got to win a Super Bowl. There are a lot of players, I can touch on that, players that deserve to win a Super Bowl that didn't. That's even a better question. Is players that should have won a Super Bowl at some point in their career and just never. And Frank Gore, to my knowledge, is still playing. I think he's hanging in there barely, but there are so many players, and I think that's part of the reason Jason Witten just came back from commentating. I think he really wants to win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys. He might not win it. He maybe just wants to get there. I mean, you want to win it, but at least just play. Yeah, and Legalized Quack says Dan Marino. Absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest name that comes to mind. Absolutely, when it comes to that, Fix that real quick. But you look all across the board, and I think that's why he came back, was to try to win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys. And whether or not he'll get to do that, but the Cowboys, their biggest thing is going to be getting some big-time free agents on the defensive side of the ball. Their offense is looking good. Prescott, not a bad quarterback. Ezekiel Elliott, one of the best running backs in the league right now. Solid offensive line. Amari Cooper. Then on the defensive side of the ball, can they land somebody like an Earl Thomas or a Landon Collins who just got put on the free agency board from the Giants? They can get a big-name player like that. They had Jason Witten back at tight end. Maybe he can win a Super Bowl. Scrolling through, what else we got here? It's Comic Dude 45 saying what he's seen, the Big Ten and the SEC, they don't like each other. The meme page I'm a member of makes a few anti-SEC memes, among other things. Yeah, I mean, look, no one likes the SEC. That's the thing. I mean, SEC people like the SEC, but no one else does. And they hate the SEC because they are not the SEC. That's the way I like to look at it. Because the SEC, as I mentioned, has been the most dominant conference for about the past 10 years. Winning national championship. And you can go as far as say, well, it's not just the SEC, it's Alabama. Sure, Alabama has been the best team in the SEC over the past 10 years and have been the main reason. But, Auburn won a national championship in that span. Georgia has quickly risen up. Florida was winning national championships back in, 06, 07 with Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer. So the SEC has been the best. No one likes them. Everybody wants to dethrone them. That's why everybody's rooting against them when you have, a national championship. That's why I think a lot of people are rooting for Clemson. Alabama fans root for Alabama. SEC fans probably rooting for Alabama. Everybody else in the country probably rooting for Clemson. Just to see someone outside of Alabama, of course, but someone outside of the SEC to win a national championship. So yeah, you're right. I think they certainly do. And the Big Ten hates the SEC even more because, as I mentioned, the Big Ten is the closest team, competitive-wise, to the SEC. If you're ranking the conferences, which we did last summer, SEC's 1, Big Ten right behind them. And you saw that we even broke that down to winning percentages for each team. And the SEC still had a slight edge over the Big Ten in that regard. So 2 great comments here from Mitch and then that dude BP asking about throwing the horns. And this is just random topics, which is fine. That's what we're here for. But asking if it's stupid if you throw horns down, you go horns down like that, right? You get thrown for a flag. But that dude PP makes a good point. If they can do horns up, hook 'em horns, then why is it illegal to throw horns down? And look, it's ridiculous, guys. Let me tell you what, the game of football has become, to me, just a very weak sport. I'm all for making the game safer. I disagree with some of the calls now, like the targeting rules, and especially in the NFL where if you hit a quarterback, you've got to hit him at a certain area because if you hit him too low or too high, it's a flag. But then you go on to the celebration rules now. Now the NFL's got, choreographed celebrations. And now in college, you can't throw horns down, and we got Lincoln Riley and Tom Herman asking league officials if you can or can't, and can we get flagged for it? I mean, just grow up. Grow up. Look, you're going to do hook 'em horns. I'm going to hook them down if I want to. And that's so be it. And I don't see anything wrong with that. So I think people need to grow up. Is it disrespectful? No, because look, it's not taunting by any means whatsoever. I don't think so. So I think it's stupid to be flagged for that. And I think that dude makes a good point. If you can't hook them down, then if you can't do them down, you can't do them up. I know that's been Texas' thing for years, but so has been hooking them down. That's been a thing for years. So deal with it. That's I'm passionate about that. Cause I don't really have a tolerance for just stupid things. And that is one of the things that just irritates me. That is so stupid. There are grown men out there, coaches and players. They're college kids. To grow up. Just grow up. Be a better man. Take the high road. If you want to do it, do it. Who cares? Leave it out there on the field. You're gonna win a game by the way you play football, not by taunting somebody or throwing up a hand gesture or whatever. That's my philosophy. Prince 6'1" joined the chat. Always good to see you, even though, hey, I said we were going to be here for a while, so I'm glad you were able to join us for a while today. Big-time Clemson fan, and was getting into heated discussion with some people on Sunday night, I believe. So good to see you. Emperor of Rome, good point. Frank Gore ranked 4th all-time in rushing yards, so we knew he was pretty high up there. I'm sure, like I said, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I'm sure he is very far away from number 1. Frank Gore has been playing in the league for a very, very long time. Would love to see him crack top 3. He'd have to play a pretty long time, I think, to get even close to be number 1. So, yeah. By far, one of those underrated running backs. No one talks about it. But he's a hard runner. Let me tell you that. He is a hard runner. He's scary, man. Frank Gore is a scary man. Craig Pina making a joke saying quarterbacks should wear dresses instead of pads. We're talking about just the new rules in both the NFL and in college about targeting and where you can or can't hit a quarterback, how hard you can hit a quarterback, can you drive him into the ground. You're right. I mean, in that sense, you might as well just go to flag football. And I honestly believe, and this hurts to say, that in the next decade or so, we might be looking towards a more flag football-based format for college or high school or somewhere down the road. You're gonna get there, and that's very unfortunate. And like I said, I am all for player safety. I do not. We have seen multiple times where people have gotten, whether there's paralyzed, horrible concussions. They get CTE. They did that movie Concussion over that. It's a real thing. People have died. I get it. But it's still the game of football. There are multiple ways to make the game safer. Absolutely. New technology, new helmets, new equipment, everything to make the game as safe as possible. But it is football. We can't sit here and nitpick exactly, because sometimes you just can't help it. You can't sit here and nitpick where you can or can't hit a person, and if you hit someone too hard, or if you're leading with your head, sometimes you can tell if it's intentional, sometimes it's not. It's a fine line. The referees have got to do a better job of that. I'm all for making the game safer, but it is still football, and we can't take away. It's not barbaric. But you got to keep the game in play, because that's part of the fun in it, guys. I mean, honestly. So like I said, all for making it safe. I don't want y'all to think that I'm necessarily a barbaric person. Like, I want to see injuries. That's not what I'm saying. But we do need to see some changes to these rules. And unfortunately, they're changing in the wrong direction, in my opinion. All right, looking through some more Frank Gore talk here. Prince 6'1" saying Clemson wide receiver going to be big time scary this year, and that's very possible. They got a lot of talent, and when you've got a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence throwing to your wide receivers, he's going to make them look real good. Frank Gore, Emperor of Rome, says rushed for over 700 yards despite missing some games. That was this year. Craig Pina says, he played tackle football starting in the 2nd grade, so about 8 years old. And if they can tackle, grown men can too. Now, there's something to be said for that. Obviously, 8-year-olds aren't going to be hitting as hard as grown men. You're not popping each other as hard. I mean, you're still getting hit. But I played football too. I've been there, but obviously not at the elite level as college or NFL. But they got all these movements now to prevent tackle football in youth. Prevent youth football. Stuff like that, because if you start them young, really head trauma, all that. I know it's a real thing. I know people have lost loved ones to those type of things. I do. But also, it is a choice as well. It is a choice to go out there and play the game of football. Mitchie 3 and Prince 6'1" back and forth. Clemson is or is not wide receiver U. Prince adamant that it is. Mitchie 3 saying wide receiver U is Ole Miss. And that is that's a pretty bold statement. I mean, they have produced some very, very solid wide receivers in the past. Absolutely. But here comes Prince. Good rebuttal. I love it. I love it. Some big-time Clemson wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Mike Williams. Lane saying that Iowa is tight end U, and I could go as far to agree with that. Iowa has produced some very, very, very solid tight ends over the past couple of years. I don't know if I'd say they're tight end U because, over the past couple of years they have produced solid tight ends. This year they've produced some solid tight ends, but, couple solid players doesn't make you a wide receiver U or a tight end U or a DB U, anything like that. It's got to be consistent, year in and year out, or maybe you miss a year or two, but you're 9 times out of 10 you're producing these type of players. That's you're known for breeding tight ends or wide receivers or defensive backs, whatever it is. But yes, Iowa has produced some very solid players in that regard. Common Dude 45. I played in the annual Soup Bowl this year. Well, it was similar to flag football. We could tackle to some extent. At least we won. Hashtag band better than Glee Club. I love it. I love it. Annual Soup Bowl. Actually sounds pretty fun. Now that is a good question there. Emperor of Rome. Is LeSean McCoy a Hall of Famer? That's a good question. And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say he's not. I do not think LeSean McCoy is a Hall of Famer. What has LeSean McCoy done? Now, phenomenal stats, had a couple great years with the Eagles, but then goes over to the Bills. Really hasn't done much with the Bills, really, compared to what he... I remember a couple years ago where LeSean McCoy was practically unstoppable. Was just almost unstoppable. Was like the #1 running back in the league. I know that #1 spot rotates year in and year out, but he was unstoppable with the Eagles at times. But and you can't judge him based on Super Bowls or anything. He obviously hasn't been to a Super Bowl, hasn't won a Super Bowl. But I don't think LeSean McCoy is a Hall of Famer. Good stats, good numbers, but and that's great. Plenty of people do that. People can put up some decent numbers, but I think it also means you got to put up good numbers consistently, and he hasn't done that with the Buffalo Bills. Now, I know he got dealt a bad hand with the Bills. Not the best of teams. Maybe they'll get there, but no. I do not think that he's a Hall of Famer. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I don't think so. He's still got a couple years left. He's still got some years left. Maybe he can prove me wrong. Maybe he can go on a little tear. Maybe grab a Super Bowl. Maybe not with the Bills, but somewhere down the road. But yeah, no, I wouldn't go as far to say that yet. USC 88, how do I think USC will turn things around? USC Trojans. That dude just wanted to clarify if it was USC. USC Junior is South Carolina, according to everybody else. And I gotta agree with that. I mean, come on, guys. If you're a South Carolina fan, you're calling yourself USC. Yes, you are the University of South Carolina, but come on, we all know the real USC is University of Southern California. How will USC turn things around? Well, first off, it's going to come down to play of JT Daniels. It's going to come down to quarterback play. Absolutely. That's the biggest thing. And, Clay Helton is on the hot seat. I will tell you what, USC, there are a handful of schools and programs in the nation that expect to succeed and expect to compete in their conference and nationally year in and year out. USC is one of those schools. USC is not a school that expects to go, that gets excited for going 6-6 and making a bowl game, 7-5 and making a bowl game. They expect to compete in the Pac-12. They expect to compete at the national level. And they were doing that a couple of years ago. I mean, for like 2 years. I mean, with Sam Darnold and all the talent they had there. I mean, they were number 4 in the country. Made the Rose Bowl, made the Cotton Bowl. Never could crack into the playoff, but we're there. We're in contention. But they kind of fell from grace this past season. Clay Helton on the hot seat. Got to turn things around. Comes down to quarterback play. I think that's the biggest thing for them. USC, lost a lot of firepower last season on both sides of the ball. We do have to keep that in mind, that they did lose a lot of people, so we couldn't expect them to replicate the same success that they had from 2 years ago last season. But this year they've got to show some improvement. And if Clay Helton doesn't win, I think 7 games, he's out. And even if he wins 7 games might be too small of a number. He might still be out after that. So it's going to take a lot. Quarterback play, biggest thing though. Leader of your team, young quarterbacks. You had to replace Sam Darnold, but they've had a year under their belt. Now you've got to step it up and really start to improve. Mina Eldawane, do I see Texas beating Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship this year? I don't even know who I have making the Big 12 championship this year. I mean, come on. I haven't even sat down and predicted everybody yet. So, like I said, we're working on that, but we haven't really, we don't just sit down and make a wild prediction immediately, So, Texas certainly going to be a top dog in the Big 12, no doubt in my mind. Very competitive. They're going to be tough. But I'm not going to go as far as say they're making the Big 12 championship right now. I'm not going to go as far as say Oklahoma's going to make the Big 12 championship right now. They got to play each other first in the regular season. Then we'll see if they can get to the title game like they did this past season. But we got a ways to go for that. Comic Dude 45, who was on my coach's hot seat this year, and which coach or coaches from last year's list got off the hot seat or are still on it? I can tell you one guy that I think jumped off of the hot seat last year was Derek Mason at Vanderbilt. That was a big one for me. Also, Kalani Sitake over at BYU. That's another one that jumped off for me. Sitake first off was right at 500 after 2 years with the Cougars. And I did not expect much out of him in year 3. I just, about the people they had bringing back, the schedule, I didn't think they were going to be poised for anything. But that win over Wisconsin was huge for the Cougars. Winning that bowl game, huge for BYU, I think was a big. I don't know if they would have fired him after 3 years, but 2 losing seasons in a row would have been bad for BYU, a program that does agree to or does expect to be in bowl games year in and year out. Vanderbilt, on the other hand, Derek Mason had only been to 1 bowl game under him, got back to one last year, beating, of course, Tennessee in that finale to get them there, much like they did a couple of years ago when they lost to, I think it was North Carolina State. Him getting off the hot seat was big. Had he won that game, would have been even better. If Derek Mason does not get to a bowl game this year, I think he could be out because you can't afford to go. You've got to show improvement, guys. You've got to, you take a step forward and get to 6-6 or whatever, then you got to build on that. Now, I know you lose players, you get hit with injuries, you lose coaches, so forth, so on. It happens, but you can't afford to have a bunch of success and then take major steps back. Derek Mason tended to do that. He jumped off the hot seat. I mentioned Clay Helton was on my hot seat going into this season over at USC. I think someone here, I think Prince 6'1". Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Will Muschamp might be on the hot seat going into 2019. He said he should be, but he won't. USC Junior is happy with 7-6 mediocrity. I would say after being exposed to the Steve Spurrier era at South Carolina, that they would not be okay with 7-6 mediocrity. South Carolina was competing in the SEC East, winning 10 games, 11 games a year with Steve Spurrier. That's where they want to be. Now, it's tough to do now with Georgia and Florida and a rising Tennessee squad and a rising Kentucky squad. Will Muschamp could be out because that, mediocrity is not acceptable, especially in the SEC. I think Helton's up there. I'll make a note of that. Of coaches to make a list. We'll have a video out for that. It gives me something else to post for you guys. Make a list of coaches that are on the hot seat going into 2019 because there are a handful of them. Some people are always like, oh, after 1 year, you have one poor performance with a head coach, they want him out after year 2 if he has another bad year. I disagree with people that say that. You got to give your coaches a little bit of time. Now, if they go, back-to-back 1-11 seasons or something, yeah, maybe that's just not the right fit. But, someone mentioned Willie Taggart as well, maybe Florida State. We mentioned if he doesn't get them back to a bowl game, I think he is out. And I think Florida State, like USC, like I said, is one of those programs that expects to contend year in and year out, both in their conference and nationally. And if they're not getting the job done in that regard, then that coach is going to be out, without a doubt. Emperor of Rome saying he disagrees that LeSean McCoy is a Hall of Famer because he did have 2 1,000-yard seasons in 4 years with the Bills. Now, that's really good. Right, 2 1,000-yard seasons. But, I mean, I've known a handful of running backs to, pull off a 1,000-yard season. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do by any means. It's certainly not an easy thing to do with the Buffalo Bills, who have not been necessarily most, they made the playoffs, 2 years ago, lost to the Jaguars, but still made it. But I just still can't justify putting LeSean McCoy in the Hall of Fame. 1,000-yard seasons are great, put up great numbers with the Eagles. He did. Not going to deny that at all. But I just can't justify putting LeSean McCoy in the Hall of Fame. But maybe he will. Prove me wrong. Do I think Spencer Rattler could beat out Jalen Hurts for starting quarterback at Oklahoma? Prince 6'1" says, no way. I assume that's who he was responding to. No, Jalen Hurts will not lose the starting job to Spencer Rattler. Here's why. You're looking at, a Jalen Hurts quarterback, who, a man that got Alabama to the national championship game, who won the SEC championship for them over Georgia this past year, has experience under Nick Saban at Alabama. I mean, Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, guys. I mean, he just got a bad rap, and Tua was clearly the better quarterback there. Spencer Rattler, he's just coming in as a freshman, so give him some time. You got to give him some time. Jalen Hurts, more experience all the way around. No way that Spencer Rattler beats out Jalen Hurts unless he just starts to be abysmal like he was in that national championship game. Maybe Lincoln Riley pulls a switch and sticks Rattler in there. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think this is Jalen Hurts' job for this entire year. And Lincoln Riley, quite the quarterback whisperer, as we've seen over recent years with guys like Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. I would expect nothing less out of Jalen Hurts, who I think is a very, really good runner. Needs to work on his dynamics in terms of throwing the ball. Not saying he's a bad passer by any means, but needs to work on that more so than his ability to scramble. But Lincoln Riley can probably work out those issues in the end. And yes, I'm seeing the comments now. MCD Sports 4, good to see you. Glad you're able to join us. Yes, this is, I addressed it at the beginning, but Arkansas State, obviously where I'm at school right now. And as I said, it's Casual Thursday. That's what we usually do. And it's just sad to be the pullover I was wearing today. So they're not my team per se, but they are my school. So that's who I'll be supporting, or at times for now. So yeah, Arkansas State, the Red Wolves, as Prince 6'1", agreed. Dat dude BP. I wish Brett Bielema stayed the Arky coach. He looked like the mascot. Wow, that's harsh towards old Brett Bielema. What did he ever do to you, man? He's a good man. I had the honor of sitting down with him a couple times. Once when he was at Wisconsin, once when he was at Arkansas. Good man, really good. I mean, large, yes. I mean, yes, Razorback, Hog, whatever. But very good guy overall. And he knows his football. He was just his brand of football just was not meant to be in the SEC. He won some games there. He did. But keep in mind, when he won games with Arkansas, it was when he brought in Dan Enos as his offensive coordinator and they started to pass the ball a little bit more. You will not win in the SEC ground and pound the way he was trying to do it. Not going to happen. He had great running backs, Alex Collins, Jonathan Williams, Raleigh Williams, but they were all 1,000-yard rushers at times, but that just was not going to work in the SEC, and I don't know why he thought it was going to. That was way better to keep that up north at Wisconsin. Prince 6'1", Chad Morris turned Clemson's program around, give him time and a solid defensive coordinator. He will do the same with Arkansas, and he's right. He's right. Now, the defensive coordinator right now is John Chavis, as we all know, the chief. Experience all the way around in the, in the SEC, Tennessee and LSU and Texas A&M. But he's getting old. His methods are kind of getting outdated as well. So he probably needs a solid defensive coordinator. But he's right. He was kind of the spark for Clemson. He kind of sparked that Clemson dynasty. Dabo Swinney gets the credit. He deserves the credit. He's the head coach. But Chad Morris he's a heck of a recruiter. Revolutionized that offense over at Clemson. Taj Boyd, Deshaun Watson was a big-time recruiter. Kind of was the one that really started the liftoff for Clemson, and Dabo Swinney continued to take over after that. And you got to give a lot of credit to Brent Venables as well as defensive coordinator. They couldn't have done any of that without him either. I think he is the best defensive coordinator in the game by far. But yes, Chad Morris, give him time. He'll turn Arkansas around, I would like to think, for the Hogs' sake. And Prince giving him a lot of respect as a former offensive coordinator, as he should. Border Bob, Chief, John Chavis is from his hometown, grew up right down the street. What do you know? Small world. Hey, I'm a big fan of John Chavis, man. I mean, like I said, I think his methods are getting outdated. I don't think his methods are as good as they used to be defensively, but he's still getting the job done at times. He was doing okay with A&M, did pretty good with LSU, so man, well, you know, living right down the street, it's pretty cool. He's a cool dude. Prince 6'1". Venables and Morris were a hell of a duo. One thing Dabo does well as the CEO is hire and keep good coordinators, and that's the biggest thing, though, is the fact is hiring coordinators is the easy part. Retaining them is the hard part. You look over at the two, arguably Clemson just won the national championship. They're my favorite to win this year's national championship, but the two biggest dynasties in the NFL and college so far have been the New England Patriots and the Alabama Crimson Tide. One thing those two things have in common: great head coaches, Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, but they continue to lose head coaches year in, or assistant coaches year in and year out. Sometimes they leave to take other head coaching jobs. Sometimes it is to take, following other people. Like for example, Kirby Smart leaving as defensive coordinator, going to take the head coaching job at Georgia. Loses some coordinators from Alabama to go follow Kirby Smart. You want coaches, you want assistants that are learning from the best. Belichick and Saban are the best in the NFL and in college. Venables has been very, very loyal to Clemson. I'm surprised he has yet to take a head coaching job. I expect that to be coming soon. Maybe not. Maybe he enjoys it. I mean, he's at Clemson, he's getting paid well, and he's winning. And I'm okay with that. I mean, look at Bud Foster. Bud Foster has been at Virginia Tech for years. I mean, never once took another head coaching job, and his defense is always usually pretty good. So it's a very difficult thing to retain assistant coaches, especially coordinators, offensive and defensive coordinators. Your specialty coaches, wide receivers, running backs, defensive backs, etc. Important, but your main guys, you got your big three: head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. DM, should North Dakota State become an FBS team? And we all said yes. We talked about this in a previous live stream. Legalized Quack saying they should join the Mountain West. That, someone talks about, and that's probably the most logical answer I've ever heard to that question, because some people were saying, oh, throw North Dakota State into the Big 12 or the Big 10. Or no, hold on. You're not going to jump from FCS to Power 5. That's not how that's going to work. Mountain West makes sense, especially geographically. You throw them in the Mountain West playing teams like Boise State, playing guys like Utah State, Fresno State. I don't know Hawaii's in the Mountain West, but you guys like that would make a lot of sense. But the amount of success that they have had in the FCS, winning 5 national championships, producing solid NFL talent, and then coming over to the FBS and beating teams such as Kansas State and Iowa. Yeah, they deserve to come over to the FBS. They should. I don't know if they will, but they should try to make the move. And I think it would be smart of them to go to the Mountain West or one of those, group of 5 conferences, but that isn't so low as like the Sun Belt, but is high enough that if they can pull up a couple upsets here and there, they would certainly be competing for a New Year's Six bowl game. All right, so breaking news, according from Mitchie3, it's official: Florida, Miami, August 24th. So big time. That's huge. That's a week early. It was supposed to be on August 31st. We've got it on August 24th now. So we get a week extra of football. And it's not just, like I said, it's not just normal football. That is a big game. In-state rivalry, a reborn Miami team, and a Florida team riding some big-time momentum after that Peach Bowl win over Michigan. So that's going to be great. As Prince 6'1" said, that's early major college football. Best way to put it. Major college football that you're getting earlier than anything else. MCD Sports 4 says he doesn't like the game being moved. I don't see why it's an issue. I'm all for it. spotlight's going to be on that game on August 24th. Big time for them. And let the trash talk begin now. I mean, anytime you get big, in-state rivals, I mean, let it begin. That's. I'm sure as we do live streams over the course of these next couple months into the summer, and right before we get to that game on August 24th, we'll be hearing lots between and when we do predictions. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that too. So it's going to be exciting stuff. But I'm glad it's official. It'll be a lot of fun. MCD Sports 4 says he believes only a group of 5 teams should play in week 0. That's kind of been the case for the past couple of years. You can make an argument that should be the case, but could it give those teams exposure? But I'm also all for watching a game that actually matters. And I know that hurts to say group. I'm not saying those football games for a group of 5 schools don't matter. But as Prince 6'1" said, they're so boring to watch. They have no implications. This, as we mentioned earlier in the stream, Florida-Miami does not just have in-state rival implications. It has college football playoff implications because Florida is technically in the hunt for the playoff. Miami could be too. More so, Florida. It's a big deal. And it's a big deal because it's the birth of the Manny Diaz era in Miami. And it's also Emperor of Rome's birthday, so even better, right? I mean, that's even a bigger deal. So he gets a big-time football game on his birthday, as Prince said, early birthday present to him. So big time. Well, guys, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to start wrapping things up here. We've already hit the hour mark. I've got a lot of stuff to knock out over here on campus. I can tell you that. But I will promise you this. We will have a video out for you this weekend. I've been a liar. I've been saying that we were going to do that for about the past 2 weeks, that we were going to have videos out, last week, the week before that, and I never got to it. But we will have a video out for you this weekend. I know exactly what it's going to be, so stay tuned for that. Go Red Wolves, as MCD Sports says. DM, thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I mean, we appreciate y'all's support because these live streams couldn't happen without you guys contributing to the chat. So we definitely appreciate that. You guys stay safe. Have a great weekend. We will see you guys again on Sunday night. We'll be doing another live stream, so stay tuned for that. Go check out our Twitter at Gridiron Expert for some news on that. And as always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe. We'll see